I'm requested this morning to speak about we the young people. And I told Blessing that that's exactly what I was going to do. Blessing, I didn't lie to you. I just changed my mind. I changed my mind because after seeing the effort and the detail and passion that you brought to this, I thought I wanted to say something because it inspired me too. And so I thought, this morning, I'd like to try and address a slightly different subject matter: how Nigeria needs you. And it's really fairly straightforward. We put our country down a lot. Nigeria is this, Nigeria is that, everything is bad, and things will never be proper, we're doomed. Doom and gloom has become part of our mindset as this country. And as young people on national service, many of us no longer want to celebrate our country. We think these difficulties are a fate, not a choice, not a consequence of policy choices that our leaderships have made, and we have contributed to. Our parents, in fact, our uncles have contributed to. And therefore I thought this morning to spend just a few minutes dialoguing with us about how Nigeria needs us. And why? It's not just because Blessing inspired me as she inspires a lot of people, it's also something else. In a country that is undercapacitated or incapable, there is no rich person. A lot of you go to school, you want to come out, make money, you think of yourself as another Aliko Dangote making. And, Micah Denoga or Jimovia, you think of yourself as somebody who's going to make a heck of a lot of killing. With lots of money and, lots of fleets of yachts and stuff, a good life, glitz and glamour and stuff. But in a country like this, where most people are poor, over 70% by some reckonings or more are poor, living on less than $2 a day, you cannot be rich. No amount of money you make makes you rich. And you're always going to be bled by inconvenient taxation and the taxation of inefficiencies and incapability. And because of that, I thought it's important to talk about how Nigeria needs you. I'm not going to spend too much time because this is a subject matter on which every one of us is an expert. And so I want to say 6 things, illustrate 6 things, and I'll go and sit down. Because there are people who are much more knowledgeable and much more experienced coming after me, and all I am is no more than John the Baptist. And the first thing I want to suggest, you've got to dream big. A lot of people tell us, you need to be humble. Modesty is a virtue. In this country, it isn't. As a young person, you've got to be ridiculously ambitious. And you've got to think impossible and work to make the impossible possible in your lifetime. And a lot of people say, well, what can we do? Our comfort levels in Nigeria are very low. We're used to accepting abnormality. We have normalized abnormality and are producing young people who are unwilling to elevate beyond the generation that brought them to life. And so, the first story I want to tell you is the story of Nelson Mandela. Everybody has their favorite Nelson Mandela story. Mine is a very brief story. In 1951, Nelson Mandela was 33 years old. The ANC was in disarray. The National Party had just won elections in 1948, and Hendrik Verwoerd had formalized apartheid, overthrowing Jan Smuts as the Prime Minister of South Africa. And so black people were dead. Nelson Mandela was a young man on the foothills of a professional life. He was the first major black lawyer, major black firm in South Africa. He had a life ahead of him. He called Walter Sisulu and Oliver Tambo, 33 years old, and he told them, I will be the first black president of South Africa in my lifetime. 1951 May, 3 years after the establishment of the National Party and of apartheid in South Africa, a black man, 33 years old, looked at his best friends and told them, I will be your first black president. That was beyond audacity. It was stupid. It happened in his lifetime because he cared to dream beyond modesty and beyond comfort levels. And because he cared to dream beyond modesty and comfort levels, I want to tell you something else. Number two, and this sounds like it contradicts number one. Little things matter. In Nigeria, we care about white elephants. We don't care about details. And if for this generation, you've got to care about details and about connecting the dots. Let me repeat myself. You must care about the details and about connecting the dots. A lot of people, I don't come here as the chair of the National Human Rights Commission, but a lot of people are wondering why I've kept quiet about the same-sex marriage bill or act. And I want to be careful about this because whatever I say, they'll say the chairman of the National Human Rights Commission has said this, that, and the other one about the same-sex marriage act. But the thing that strikes me about the Same-Sex Marriage Act is the failure to acknowledge that details do matter. How many of you here are lawyers or went to law school in Nigeria? Just a few. In your introduction to Nigerian legal system, and this is my second story, they teach you about the reception of English law into Nigeria. And they tell you something, that in every state of Nigeria, we are bound by the common law, doctrines of equity, and statutes of general application in force in England on what date? 1st of January 1900. Let me repeat myself. As an independent country, we got independent in 1960. We are bound by rules of common law, doctrines of equity, and statutes of general application in force in England on the 1st of January 1900. And you want to conduct an argument on same-sex marriage with laws that changed in the last decade in other countries. It's not possible. The first thing you do is give yourself the legislative capability to renew your social values, to upgrade your social values. Because when you discuss social values relating to sexuality in Nigeria, they are based on norms that were formed when Queen Victoria was the Queen of England. And in those days, when Queen Victoria was the Queen of England, sodomy was a crime. Same-sex marriage was a sin. Marriage was defined in Hyde in 1866 as the union of a man and a woman, and that's it. And unless you care about those details and about renewing them, this conversation, is that Ambassador? You're welcome. Your Excellency. Unless you care about those details, this conversation is in a time warp. And for me, that is the more interesting thing. It's not about a symptom, it's about a disease. A disease of leadership that fails to care about the renewal of its population and its social values. That is why we complain about corruption, that's why we complain about impunity, and that is why we complain about arbitrariness. Because we have failed to renew our values. That takes me to my third point. Nigeria has a lot of problems, and if I asked people to enumerate Nigeria's problems here, we will not end. But really, there is only one problem that matters. It is a 4-letter word. No, don't take your mind out of the gutter. It is C-A-R-E. We have a crisis of a country in which nobody cares. That is our country's problem. And for this generation, therefore, how does Nigeria need you? You need to care. You need to care about everything. You need to care about details. You need to care about your ambition. You need to care about your generation. You need to care about your neighborhood. You need to care about country. And about caring, let me tell you another story. The story of the rat trap. Blessing has helped me tell this story. About the woman who had no food, and whose food at home, old woman, was being eaten up by a rat. She had been deprived by HIV/AIDS of her children, and she was looking after her grandchildren. And so she set a trap for the rat. The rat, the domestic rat, goes out on that evening and sees the trap and says, so he wants help in dismantling it. He goes to the chicken. Chicken, help me. This trap is going to deal with me. Chicken says, which one can send me inside? The trap is for you, not for me. Goes to the goat. Goat, can you help me? Please. The goat is like, this is not my business. Goes to the cow. The cow says, I'm too big for your small trap. So, the rat goes home and does what? And goes praying and fasting. Casting and binding. We do that very well here. And because the rat goes home, the trap sleeps overnight. In the morning, the owner of the trap goes to look for the rat, inspect the trap. And what does she see? A snake. The trap had caught a snake. In trying to dismantle it, the snake bites the owner, inflicts poison on her, venom. And the saga begins. She's hospitalized, and in the hospital, she's running low on nutrients. They need protein. What happens? They turn to the chicken. The chicken dies because the chicken had to be served up for proteins. And then there was no money to treat her. The grandchildren could not pay for hospital bills. And what did they do? They needed to generate money. They sold the goat. They sold the goat, but the trip to the hospital was a long distance. By the time they got there, grandma had died. And in the tradition of the community, you don't send grandma home empty-handed. She needs to be accompanied by what? A cow. And so the cow had to go to heaven as well with grandma. And at the end of all of this, who was the only animal standing? The rat. Why was the rat left standing? Because it cared. You've got to care, because when you don't care, the consequence of not caring may take you down and may take down the things that matter to you. And because you've got to care about everything, you are therefore a leader, and therefore leadership matters. And that's my fourth point. Leadership is not about presidents and prime ministers taking responsibility. In a country in which median age is 24, average life expectancy is 48, young people on national service are well past midlife. You are each and all leaders. In a country in which over 10.5 million kids are out of school, you are part of a leadership cadre. Everybody with a degree in this country is a big person. And all that limits you, poverty, is a state of mind. All that limits you is the state of your values, the state of ambitions, and the state of ceilings that you set on them. And that is why part of what I hope to convey this morning is never let anybody tell you that you're so small that you cannot be anything and you cannot be as big as you wish to be, because that's what Nigeria does to everybody. It locks you down in the idea that you're too small to be big, you're too small to be useful, you're too small to be great in this country. And because we invest so much in creating small people, we don't have a country in which we can aggregate big people and people who have vast ambitions. And therefore this morning, hopefully, and part of the message of T2T is you are able to be as big as you desire yourself and your country to be. But if you're going to be a leader, there are therefore two more things I want to add, and I'll go and sit down. Number 5, if you don't organize, you condemn yourself to agonizing. If you don't organize, you condemn yourself to agonizing. Organizing is no more than caring about somebody else, about the environment, and doing the things you need to do to bring them about. In this country, where 911 doesn't work, emergency numbers don't work, emergency services don't exist, your greatest help is your neighbor. And because your greatest help is your neighbor, it is necessary to organize, to lend a hand, to care, and to be able to do things together. And when citizens do things together, leadership has to care. Government is, in old economic language, government is about demand and supply. If citizens don't demand, the public sector doesn't supply. You've got to learn to demand, and learning to demand is about doing what? Organizing. And if you're going to organize, therefore, finally, you've got to know your country. Nigeria is a vast country. These days, we are polarized. A lot of people tell you, oh, those people are Muslims, you're Christians. You're from the north, we are from the south. We are bombers and you're militants. You're male, we are female. No. We are one country under one God. And this country is not going to be broken by nobody. It's not going anywhere in a hurry. Let's get that clear. If you think Nigeria is not good enough, end up in Panya or Chad, and you'll appreciate this country. Go pay 47% tax in the UK, and you'll appreciate this country. So I think it is important that we care about knowing the country. And don't let anybody tell you that those people from that part of the country are not as good as anybody. There is goodness everywhere in this country. North, south, east, west, middle belt, Christian, Muslim. There is goodness everywhere in this country. And a lot of you would probably not have left your state before you went on national service. And they would have told you, don't go to that state because it's too dangerous. It is about what we make our country. In 2006, Ali Modu Sheriff, the governor of Borno State, told Nigerians that he did not care what was said about him because in newspapers because only 5%, less than 5% of his state could read. All of us let it pass because Borno State was out there. Today, we are living the consequences of a governor who deliberately made his people illiterate in order to give us a national security crisis. If you don't care to know about the country, that thing you dismiss as affecting other people may end up being your problem. And as I go to sit down, I'll leave you with a story of the rat and the chicken on the way, the chicken and the pig on the way to an English breakfast in London. And the story was told of the chicken inviting the pig to an English breakfast. And if you know an English breakfast, it's made of what? Bacon, eggs, baked beans, and a few other things. And the chicken is like, Mr. Pig, can you come with me? And the pig is naturally reluctant. And pleads and pleads, and the pig is like, are you sure? He says, yes. Let's go. And at the last minute, the pig says, I'm not sure I want to do it. And the chicken asks why. Are you afraid? I know, with me, what is just required is minimum participation. With you, I understand it's total commitment. Now, but with your total commitment, we are all very happy. The story of Nigeria is the story of whether you want to do minimum participation or whether you want to give total commitment. You want to be the chicken or you want to be the pig. In this country, unless you're willing to give total commitment, we're not going to change much. And for this generation, my hope and prayer is that we're prepared to be the pig on an English breakfast. Thank you.